basketball hero around here is treated like a god. I mean, I'll never find out what he could really do. I don't want this to be the high point of his life. I've seen them, the real sad ones. They sit around the rest of their lives talking about the glory days when they were 17 years old.
You know, most people would kill to be treated like a god just for a few moments.
Welcome to Keeping the Nostalgia Alive, the Indiana Basketball Memory Show. I am your host, Billy Powell. You can listen to over 180 of our shows on Keeping the Nostalgia Alive, and that's all one word, keepingthenostalgiaalive.podbean.com. Today's show, let's get to today's show. I know we're going through some difficult times, so hopefully you guys can sit back and relax and listen to some stories about success in basketball and memories of basketball. And today I'm going to interview my third head coach from Indiana State University. I have interviewed Coach Bill Hodges. I have interviewed Coach Dave Shellhouse, and both of those interviews are on keepingthenostalgiaalive.podbean.com. And today, with no further ado, is my third head coach that I get to interview, and that's Coach Greg Lansing. Coach, thanks for taking some time out of your busy schedule. Well, I don't know how busy it is with whatever we're going through today, but to share some of your stories and memories of your life in the game of basketball.
Oh, I really appreciate you having me on. You know, it is crazy times, but like you said, be the third Indiana State head coach you've talked to, that's kind of neat. I got to know Coach Hodges pretty well when we did the reunion, the 79 team reunion a couple of years back. So he's a neat guy, and obviously he had a special team there, but appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, no problem. You know, when I posted this, I'm not a Twitter guy, so I don't have a lot of stuff going on Twitter. I'm a Facebook guy, and we have just a huge following with what we do here, and a lot of the former players were commented when I told them that I was going to be interviewing you that you are really, really welcome and really good to former players who want to come around the program at Indiana State University. So I think that takes that as a nice compliment.
Well, I appreciate you saying that as well. That's I'm very blessed. It's an honor to be a head coach at Indiana State, and as a former player myself, I'm a coach's son, and I played college basketball, and that was one of the things that I wanted to do when I got here. We didn't even have a database of former players, you know, and with the history of Indiana State basketball, especially with the 79 team, but several other NCAA teams, I just wanted to make sure that we're all one big basketball family, and we do golf outings in the summer. We have a alumni game during the year, and that's just steadily grown. And again, it's I consider it an honor and a privilege to have the job I have, and just to make those guys proud when they watch our team.
Before we get into born and raised, who introduced you to the game and your ascension to where you are today, what's it like being a head basketball coach during this coronavirus? And I mean, do you do Skype or Zoom meetings with your coaches? What kind of curveball does it throw your recruiting? Give us a little bit of what is going on at Indiana State University basketball while this is happening.
Well, for one, I mean, it obviously sucks. Let's just put it simply. I can't stand not being around our guys. I can't stand not practicing, doing individual workouts, watching basketball on TV. But then, you look at it and you understand how fortunate most of us are in dealing with this time and the coronavirus. And you just try to honor those people that are on the front lines and taking care of people, those people that are affected directly with the pandemic, but just feel really lucky to be where I'm at. So we'll get on the computer. We've had a couple. I'm not very good on the computer with any of that stuff, but we've done a couple of Zoom meetings. In touch with my staff daily. In touch with the players pretty much daily as well. And we've been pretty fortunate. We've got a couple commitments by working the phones here pretty hard. So we've done well. We have a really good team coming back, but we did just add a couple more guys. So, the only thing you can do is work by phone, work by computer. I tried to watch I'm going through watching all of our games from last year. That's something that coaches do anyway, but now basically you have a little more time. You're just not in the office to do it.
I'm a graduate of Indiana State University from 1990, and I do still have 4 years.
All right.
I do have 4 years of eligibility left.
Well, we have a walk-on position open if you're interested.
No, I'm going to stick with this because this is why I do this, and this is why I don't play basketball. Coach, tell us a little bit about where you're from. Tell us a little bit about your family and maybe kind of any memories of your first introduction to this game of basketball.
Well, it was early. My dad is a retired Hall of Fame high school coach in Iowa. He and I are one of the few father-son Hall of Fame combos in Iowa, so that's kind of neat. We got to celebrate that together. But I grew up in the gym, at his practices, at his games, watching. He was old school from the start. I just remember night after night after night, he'd be down watching film, and I don't know how back when he was a head coach, I don't know how many coaches were doing the film study, but I learned at an early age to know thy enemy and to be very prepared. He was a hard-working, really hard-driving coach and a father. We butted heads a lot on different things, but I played 3 sports. I was at a smaller school, but basketball, I grew up with it, and I remember just going on scouting trips. You didn't have film to exchange back then, so you went and watched other teams play. I remember all that stuff, and just grew up in the game and loving the game.
Indiana, you've been there for quite a long time on 2 different stints, and high school basketball in the state of Indiana. Give us a little bit of a rundown what high school basketball was like in Iowa. Well,
you would probably have to say Indiana has the best high school basketball. Well, it's the most important of about any state or anywhere that I've been. Sure, there's some areas where it's extremely important to the communities or more important to the communities, but Indiana as a whole, I think, basketball is very important to their communities. Iowa's not that bad either, but in Iowa, football is big, wrestling is big, girls basketball is big. So there's several different sports that are very community based and very strongly supported by that. In Iowa, we don't have a lot of huge towns. You have Des Moines, which is your biggest and your capital, but the population is great. But I know this, growing up in it and still being around in it and knowing tons of high school coaches from over there. They got great coaches. I know that. So, they're dealing with multiple sport athletes for the most part. But it's a great sports state, and very lucky to have grown up in that state and have all the opportunities that I had.
When you were a kid, did you have a school? Of course, I'm assuming you were a Hawkeye fan, or what college basketball team did you follow? Was there a pro team that you followed? Was there anybody that when you would practice outside, I'm assuming you probably had a hoop at your house that you kind of emulated or liked to fantasize or be like?
Oh, I was absolutely a Hawk fan. I got my first written letter from Lute Olson way back in the day. I wasn't good enough to be recruited by Iowa, but I did get recruited. So I remember just a lot of nights of the whole family. We lived and died with the Hawkeyes, football and basketball, and if they didn't win, it ruined your night, it ruined your week, or whatnot. But grew up very much in a Hawkeye household. I remember growing up. It's funny. It's not funny, and I hope he ain't listening. I hope somebody doesn't tell him, but I was not a Celtic Larry Bird guy. I was a Julius Erving 76er guy. But no, getting to know Larry, I certainly haven't told him that. But I was a Sixer through and through with Dr. J, and then kind of going into MJ and that. But those were definitely a Hawk, that's for sure. And I'm still a Hawk. I was lucky enough to be on staff there for 7 years, and that was just living a dream there.
We're probably, I think you were born in December of 67. I was born in November of 67, so we're a little bit close in the age. But, but talking about high school basketball in the state of Indiana, all the way up until 1997, I think it was, one true state champion. What kind of playoff system or how did you make it to a Final Four in high school basketball in Iowa?
It's crazy now that it used to be 3 classes in basketball. Now when I played, it was 3 classes in basketball and 4 classes in football. So Harlan is a state power in football. I don't know if it's 15 state championships. I was part of 2 champions and 1 runner-up as a player myself. But in basketball, it was 3 classes, and we were the smallest school in the biggest class. So we had to play the Des Moines, the Sioux Cities, the Council Bluffs of the world to try and get to the state tournament, be a state champion. And we made it to the state tournament my sophomore year and got beat by Al Lorenzen and Cedar Rapids Kennedy. I don't know if you remember him, but the Vanilla Gorilla. So the top 8 make it to the state tournament in Des Moines, and we made it my sophomore year and got knocked out my junior and senior year, although we had pretty good seasons.
So was your first love football, or was it kind of a toss-up between both football and basketball?
No. I mean, I just loved every sport. I mean, I played baseball. I pitched and I played shortstop, and all summers were baseball. But Harlan, Harlan as a community is so good in everything. I think, when I was in college, they won baseball, football, and basketball in the same year. I mean, it's a farming community school, but just a lot of good athletes. And I loved those Friday nights playing football. I loved it. And again, we won state championships in my sophomore and junior year, and me and our best offensive lineman got hurt and could not play in the championship game our senior year, so we lost a close one, 10-7. But I loved football. But growing up around a coach of basketball, that's all I ever wanted to do. I didn't have. I still to this day. I hate to say it, but I don't have a lot of other interests other than basketball. I just grew up, and I grew up around a family that you learned you hated to lose. And it was all about winning and competing and being part of a team. So I enjoyed that in every sport. Being part of a team is just about as special thing as you can have.
At what point, were you recruited? I know you went and played at South Dakota. Were there other places that you could have gone and played basketball? Could you have played football at other places? Give a little bit about, I know it's totally different from what it's like today on recruitment and picking colleges and playing collegiate sports, but give us a rundown on how that worked and how you made your choice for where you did go.
Yeah, I got recruited highly as a football quarterback. It's just not something I ever really considered. You go to college football games and you look at them dudes, and I always remember just looking at them like, oh my gosh, these guys they're big, they're strong, they're fast, they're tough. I don't know if I want to do this, but I did. I miss it. Even when I was in college in South Dakota, we were in a dome, and I'd walk across there during football practice. I missed it a little bit. I got recruited, at a higher level than Division II, but I ended up playing Division II. I got hurt, like I said, before the championship game my senior year, and my senior year in basketball, I hurt my foot. I got my foot crushed, and I had to wear a steel plate in my shoe my entire senior year. So I just never got my quickness, my athletic ability, my athleticism back. So I was still okay. But I wasn't quite a Division I player there, so I went Division II to University of South Dakota, and just so fortunate. Sometimes you through adversity, you're fortunate, and you toughen up and you learn some lessons, and I certainly did. And I couldn't have picked a better place than University of South Dakota, and I'm proud to be an alum there. Got my master's there, was a GA there, played on 2 NCAA tournament teams, so that's kind of the path it took. I was a pretty good baseball pitcher as well. Had a chance to play professionally as a pitcher, and that was just something that I didn't really consider because I just wanted to play college basketball.
Tell us about that chance of being able to play professional baseball.
Well, I just, you get drafted, and back then the signing bonuses weren't like they are today. You get drafted high, you might as well do it. But I wanted to go to college. I wanted to play basketball, and for the money that was available for someone like me, I just didn't want to do it. And you look back and you think sometimes, man, just look at all the money those baseball pitchers are making. But lucky to have the path that I led.
When does the light bulb go off over your head and you're like, you know what, I think I would like to coach this game?
It's just something I think I always wanted to do. I think if you'd asked me as a kid what you're going to do, and maybe you probably should have played professional basketball or professional football or whatever, but it's just really all I knew. I knew going into college I was going to be a PE major so I could get into coaching. Also got a master's in counseling. I use that probably more than I use anything else sometimes, but that's really all I ever wanted to do, or really all I ever wanted to be. And I'm one of the guys that, you got college coaches, whether it be assistant or head coaches. I hit every step on the way up. I mean, I was a volunteer, a grad assistant, a high school coach, a third assistant, a restricted earnings coach, a second assistant, a first assistant, a associate head. So it took me a while. It took me a while. I didn't have the name as some great, former great college player. I really had to earn and work my way up. And when it happened, I can't tell you how happy I was and excited I was to be a head Division I coach, because there's not many of those out there.
Yeah, I've read a couple things. I'm doing a little research on some questions I was going to ask you, and it's just like it was best said in one article that I read. It's been like a domino effect for you.
Yeah, it was. Like I said, it took a while. I left Des Moines Roosevelt. I got a high school head coach and a counseling job at that school, Des Moines Roosevelt, and was just the best. I can't tell you how much I enjoyed it, but that was decent money, for a young single guy in Des Moines, which is a great city. And then I left to be a restricted earnings coach to make $10,000 a year at Indiana State, and I did that for 2 years. So some of these young guys, when they're talking about money, and even our graduate assistants want more money than that. But look now, I mean, back in the day, I had to work my way up and do it with a lot less, but it got me prepared for where I'm at.
Were you patient about your career growth? You're at one place, and like I said just a few minutes ago about the domino effect. How does that work as a basketball coach? Did you just let it come to you? Were you actively always trying to find something better, or how does that work as a basketball coach?
I have always just done the job that I have. And somebody told me long ago, I think it was Jim Hallahan, Johnny Orr's former assistant at Iowa State. I think he told me, whatever job you have, be prepared for that to be your last one. So if you're going to take another job, be prepared for it. So I've always just, even as a graduate assistant or even volunteering, I've just say, I'm going to do the job that I have and let the rest take care of itself. And I never envisioned like, hey, I got to be a Division I head coach. I have to do this. I just kind of continued to work and do my job and learn as much from other coaches and other people that I worked with. And it just gradually got there. I was never in a hurry. I was just lucky. I mean, when I was a head high school coach and took that restricted earnings job for $10,000 a year, shoot, you'd have thought I was the head coach at North Carolina. I was just so happy to be in the Division I. I didn't care what I was making or where my next meal was going to come from or where I was going to live or how I was going to pay rent. I was just, wow, I'm an assistant coach at Indiana State, and I just thought that was the greatest thing ever. So I just put my head down and worked as hard as I could. And, you it's all about who you know. And I really wasn't one of those guys that was connected as a former player, and I just got lucky. I just got lucky with the timing and where I was at and who I was with. And here you are, just past my 10th year as a head coach at Indiana State. And that doesn't happen very often in Division I.
Now, when you were at Indiana State as the restricted earnings assistant coach, I'm assuming, and may he continue to rest in peace, that was under Coach Royce Weltman?
Yeah. Well, first 2 years was Sherman Dillard, who's an assistant at Iowa now.
Okay.
And then actually when Coach Walton got the job, I went from restricted earnings to a regular assistant. So that was another great day. It was lucky that Nate Green from Des Moines, Iowa, who was a great player for us at Indiana State. I had coached him in high school, and he was on the team, and fortunate enough in that when Coach Waltman took over, he moved me into that position.
Coach Dillard, Sherman Dillard, looks very comfortable and very confident in his role as assistant at Iowa.
Oh, there's no question. I mean, Mr. Smooth there. I mean, he's the original. Keeps himself in great shape. I'm very lucky and very thankful for him. I let him know when I see him, just for him giving me I was more the assistants that hired me, but that gave me my start in Division I, and 2 years there with him as a restricted earnings. And he's a good guy, and boy, he's working for a heck of a coach there in Fran McCaffrey at Iowa. So I'm still a Hawk, so I'll shoot those guys text messages or shout out when I see him. But he's one of the original Mr. Smooths there.
How does your coaching path, lead you to Iowa?
Oh man, that's a good story. When we were I was at Indiana State, just humping and grinding as an assistant. Well, Steve Alford was the head coach at what was Southwest Missouri State, and Sam Alford, his father, was an assistant. And Sam, he's a good guy and a former high school coach, and he was a little out of his element on the road recruiting. So every team he didn't know, but he felt like I knew what I was doing, and he knew I worked really hard, saw players, and was a good evaluator. So every time he saw me, he'd come and sit by me. So for a couple of years there, I really got to know him well. And during that year, Tom Davis's lame duck year, it was kind of kept rumored, like they had got a hold of me, like, hey, I'm going to have a chance at Iowa. Would you be interested in coming? Obviously, yes. And do you know anybody there to circulate my name and help me maybe get the job? So for that year, I did what I could to help. But I remember in our conference tournament, we got matched up against Southwest Missouri State, and they hit a bomb at the buzzer to beat us. And just walking by, shaking their hands, that was my last game at Indiana State. And right after that, got hired at Iowa.
6 degrees of separation. I do a lot with the guests that I have. I don't actually know the guests, but personally, but from 6 degrees of separation, I actually do. I was on the bench as a freshman in high school in 1983 at Hinkle Fieldhouse when Steve played my high school team and went 25 for 25 from the free throw line and scored 57 points against us. And needless to say, we lost the game.
Yeah. I mean, I still say he's the best college jump shooter that ever played. And you ought to see him when he spoke at camps, man. He'd speak at our camps when I was at Iowa, and he'd talk for 45 minutes and never miss. I mean, and it just is incredible how hard he worked and how good he was as a shooter for being a 6'2" non-athletic guy. It was just it was pretty impressive. And obviously, he's a really good college coach still there at Nevada, and did a good job. We had won a couple conference a couple tournament championships when we were there at Iowa, but I'm really thankful for him giving me the opportunity, because growing up a Hawkeye, it was just an unbelievable dream to look across the floor and there's mom and dad sitting first row with their feet on the wood at Big Ten home basketball games.
Was in your coaching career, was when Iowa decided to go a different way, is that the only time during your coaching career that you've kind of I've got to find something after they decide to go in a different direction?
You know, they let me go the year, 2 years before they got run out of there, and he had hired another assistant that just came in, and he didn't like me. We didn't see eye to eye. He was a different kind of guy. So I got out of there. They let me go, and you know, it was really kind of humbling for one. It stunk because I was my dream job, and I wanted to be there. I couldn't say that for maybe the other assistant. He was always looking for that next gig, but I wanted to be there, and I got let go. And I had my phone rang. I had a call from Tom Izzo. I had a call from Bo Ryan, and both of those guys were just extremely complimentary and said, whatever I can do, if we had a spot right now, we'd hire you. So I just was really patient. Interviewed with Kirk Speraw when he was the head coach at Central Florida and was looking at some different things as an assistant. And all of a sudden, here at Indiana State, they have a spot open. And that was the spot that I wanted to be. I wanted to go back there. I wanted to help Coach Walton out. And it's just crazy to be at two places that you love and you have a passion for, like I do with Iowa and Iowa State. To just really lucky.
And tell us about your relationship with Coach Walton.
Oh man, I mean, he's probably other than my dad, the best coach I've ever been around. Now he's a bulldog, man. He was a hard driving, hard working, tough dude. Definitely out of the Bobby Knight school, so he could paint the walls with you. I'll tell you that, you know. So the good thing was I grew up in that type of environment with my dad. Getting after me all the time. So taking a butt chewing, I was used to, but, he was just as an intelligent as a man and a good man, as there was, and obviously had some success, before he had some lean years there. And, I miss him, you know, all of us assistants. I got Kareem Richardson on my staff who went to Indiana State after I left for Iowa. A lot of us around like to talk about him, like to tell stories, former players. We miss him. We lost him to cancer several years back, but his legacy lives on. There's no question.
We know all the steps and everything that had to fall in place for you to become the head coach at Indiana State University, but what was that process like? And and I want to know, like, was it like a fist in the air when you got the job? Was there goosebumps? Who was the first person that you called? And how long did you stay high? Are you still high now?
Oh man, yeah, I thank God every day for the opportunity that I have, and I try to make the most of it. But it was crazy. As an assistant, they let Coach Walton go, and I was up for the job. And Kevin McKenna was a good friend who's now an assistant at Oregon. He was an assistant at Creighton. It came down to he and I for the job. And the athletic director at that time, I think he knew I would stay if he hired Kevin. So they hired Kevin. They made me associate head coach. So I was there with Kevin for a couple of years, and then Kevin went with Dana Altman to Oregon. Kevin's now an assistant out there at Oregon. And I felt when that happened, it was an unbelievable day. It just so happened my mom and my nephew were at my house on a Sunday because we had camp the next day. We were starting camp the next day, and my nephew was going to come to camp. And all of a sudden, Kevin gives me a call and goes, "I need to see you in the office right now." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" He goes, "I'm either getting fired or I'm getting the job." And I hadn't done anything to get fired, so I thought. So we went in there, and as I'm driving in there, the athletic director calls me and says, "Hey, I need to see you first thing in the morning." And I'm like, "Okay." So I go in there, and Kevin said, "Hey, I'm going to Oregon as an assistant." And we were with the staff. We were in there talking. Lou Godino, who's at Wichita right now. We were in there, and we kind of went our separate ways. And I was pacing out in front of the office. My phone, so I called the AD. I said, "Ron," I can't wait till tomorrow. I said, "These guys are going to look at me as soon as Kevin announces it, and they're going to wonder." He goes, "Well, the job's yours. I've already talked to the president." I mean, I can't. It does give me goosebumps and about makes me choke up in tears. But yeah, I got the job right there on the spot and when Kevin told the guys that he was leaving, every one of them turned and looked at me like, "Are you getting it? I mean, are you going to be the guy?" And Kevin didn't know that at the time, so I just stepped up and I said, "Guys, it's good." I said, "We're ready to go." I said, "The Ron already told me I'm hired, and we're good to go." So that's how it happened.
You know, I'm pretty sure you probably throw into it what you threw into it when you first started your head coaching job at Indiana State University. But man, did you get a headache at first, a concentration headache or migraine, or what did you start with first? Did you know what you had coming back? Did you know, because you had a very successful year. Your first year.
The NCAA won the tournament.
Yeah.
And, went to the NCAA tournament. It was several of the guys, as assistants, you all recruit everybody, but you also kind of say, "Well, I'm the lead on this guy. I'm the lead on this guy." And I was the lead on several of the guys that we had, and the biggest one was an incoming freshman named Jake Odom, who ended up being two-time first team all conference, and that's when we had Wichita with their pros, and we had Doug McDermott, Creighton. He was two-time first team all conference guy back in that day, and as a freshman, I didn't start him his first game, but he started the rest of his career, and we went on to, I think we finished third, but we won the tournament. We played Syracuse in the NCAA tournament, went to a couple NITs in the next 3 years, so we were pretty good. Then we had some years that there in the middle, and we weren't terrible, but we weren't as good as we needed to be. If you remember the name Bryant McIntosh, who went to Northwestern, he was committed and coming, and he was going to be the next guy right after Odom. Well, right before July of his senior year, he opened up his recruiting again, so we lost him, and that really affected us. And we just weren't, again, it's all about having players who weren't as good as we needed to be. But last year we finished third, started two freshmen, and a first team all league guard that's back, so we're excited about our future.
I went ahead and, my bracket was busted that year you guys played Syracuse because I thought you guys were going to upset them.
Those guys, it was so crazy. I remember, because they play that zone and they were huge. I mean, they had 7-footers, 6'10", 6'9". Their guards were big. So I remember we used hockey sticks with pads on the end when we were practicing there against their zone. But we kind of had our, starstruck looking for a while there at the start of the game. We got down, but we battled them hard. I think we cut it to 5 late. Ended up getting beat, but it was an unbelievable experience playing there in Cleveland and playing in the NCAA tournament and going against a coach that had like 900 more wins than I had.
Coach, what do you think, you guys, were you looking at possible NIT before, all of this happened for this year?
We were certainly under consideration. Wish we'd have played a little better in the tournament. We came in on a 4-game win streak and finished third, like I said, but we didn't play particularly well, and Missouri State shot well. We shot poorly, so getting knocked out there probably wouldn't have helped us. But now there's just not many mid-major at-larges, even in the NCAA tournament. Those bids go to bigger schools, and in the NIT now, like Northern Iowa this year, they won the outright title. But if they wouldn't have won the tournament, which they didn't, they would have automatically gone to the NIT if they didn't get a bid. So conference champions gobble up the bids in the NIT, and then the rest of them basically go to Power 5 conferences. But we were certainly in consideration. It was crazy because I just had the day before filled out our NIT form and talked to a guy on the phone about it, that we were still under consideration.
Do you and your family live in Terre Haute? Yeah.
My wife, Christy, before I met her, she had a place here in Scottsdale. So this is kind of we got lucky. I lucked into this place, and that's where we're at right now. We came south just to be in better weather during this time, and working by the phone and basically doing all we're doing. But we can take long hikes and mountains, take long walks, which we've done every day. I think we've covered 65 miles just over a week, so we've been humping it. But live in Terre Haute, love Terre Haute. It's always going to be a special place, and it's always going to be a home to me.
Now, Coach, in your career in coaching, no matter from high school all the way to what you do now, who are some of the people that you've come across or you've got to have a conversation with or you've met and you're like, you know, oh, my God, if I wasn't in this game of basketball, or thank goodness I'm in this game of basketball, or I wouldn't have met this person, I wouldn't have experienced this experience?
Oh, I mean, obviously there's a lot of them, and it's just, you know, you're in the game of basketball at the level that I've been around. I also have become very good friends with several people in the NBA. So, I mean, I was at, I think 4 or 5 NBA championship series between Golden State and Cleveland, because David Griffin's a good friend of mine. He was the GM with the Cavs then. But from NBA stuff to college coaches that you're being around to media people, I mean, there's a lot, you know, and I'm not saying they're friends, but you are fortunate enough to be around some greatness. I mean, some true great. I mean, to sit at a practice for the Cleveland Cavaliers and watch LeBron James is, I mean, you know, going to NBA practices of Michael Jordan and back when Larry Brown was with the championship Pistons. There's been a lot of things that I've been fortunate enough to be around, and there's a lot of people I could thank for that. Just try to take advantage of every one of those situations that I can, and hopefully I'm not done yet. Hopefully there's more to come.
You know, coming off a very successful season, you know, cut a little bit short because of what the world's going through, what the United States is going through right now, the world. You know, your longevity as a head coach, you know, I didn't look up statistics, but, you know, that's a pretty long time.
It's unheard of. That's why you got to make the most of it. You know, I'm going to enjoy every day with this team next year, because you never know what's going on. I've been very lucky. Been very lucky to be at the place that I've been at as long as I have. Not had to bounce around. You know, it's truly a home. It's truly a community of Terre Haute and Indiana State. It's something that is a big part of me, and it always will be. But yeah, and today I always say that. Today's day and age, it's unheard of for one guy to be the head coach at one place so long, and I've been really lucky. I haven't had a lot of turnover in assistants. You know, I've tried to hire, just like in recruiting, we want high character guys, and it's this staff. I want good guys, high character guys that I like being around. You know, and I've been very, very lucky to have that. So it's just one blessing after another. You know, I have a lot to be thankful for.
You know, we've ran a little long. I just have one other question for you, and that's what's your stance on the state of Indiana and recruiting? And do you evidently your mind is open to recruiting anywhere you can find that person that fits with the Indiana State University Sycamores? But do you want to spend more time in Indiana? Do you spend more time in Indiana? Or what's the process or the thinking process when you are recruiting for Indiana State University basketball?
No, I mean, no question. I mean, we work our tail off in the state of Indiana. And before, when I first got to Indiana State, I remember going to Indianapolis and going to school. I mean, they didn't know a player on our team. They didn't know what conference we were in. They didn't know who was a coach. I think that's one thing I've been a part of, is the resurgence of Indiana State and its basketball program. I mean, you go now, there's people wearing our shirts. They saw us on TV. They know our players. We start from Terre Haute and work our way out in recruiting. But one thing about Indiana, it's recruited so hard, and it's recruited by everybody. So you don't just take someone because they're from Indiana, because they're more local, but we work really, really hard at it. And we've really been successful at it. You know, we've got several Indiana All-Stars on our team, you know, and there's not that many of those. So we're lucky to do that. But we work very, very hard at getting kids out of Indiana, and that's our first priority. But again, you're not always going to get those guys, and then you have to be able to recruit all across the country, and we certainly have, and we'll continue to do so.
We've been talking with Coach Greg Lansing, head basketball coach at Indiana State University for the Sycamores, or as one of my followers who played at Indiana State, Rick Fields, calls them the Fighting Trees. So
Rick's a great guy. He's a great guy.
So I thank you for your time. Be safe and blessed, and I'm sure everybody out in Sycamore Nation is going to enjoy listening to this, and we appreciate your time.
Well, it's been an honor to be on with you. I appreciate it. You stay safe as well.